In late July of last year, Disney officially confirmed that they would no longer be doing physical media releases in Australia. And I thought that was a really depressing way to mark the end of an era. I mean, yeah, DVDs and Blu-rays have been on their way out for a long time now, but the fact that Disney, one of the biggest companies in the world, just sort of seized physical media releases in a country where that was definitely a market, I don't know, it just feels weird. And if nothing else, it goes to show that, yeah, physical media is not a format that a lot of people care about anymore. Now, considering my room looks like this, I am not one of those people. But ultimately, it's just not a market that's worth investing in for the most part. The final physical media release Disney did in Australia was Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It was done with very little fanfare. They just released a very basic version of the DVD and Blu-ray. And yeah, that was it. And man, it kind of bums me out that the MCU just sort of ended here with physical media releases in Australia. Now, granted, if I really wanted a complete MCU film collection, I could just import these. But that just feels redundant, especially because I don't think I've bought a DVD specifically of the MCU since 2018. I mean, up until that point, I had a very weird fixation on owning every single one of these, but by the time stuff like Infinity War rolled around, I just didn't care anymore. And even if for some reason I did want to keep collecting these, I feel like them ceasing production in Australia just means that most other countries don't have that much time left. Yeah, you can get the most recent movies for now, but who knows how much longer these are going to last. It seems like Disney's focus, especially with the MCUs, on streaming stuff, especially because most of this franchise is just Disney Plus stuff now. And hell, of the solid dozen shows they've released on Disney Plus, only 2 of them have had physical media releases, and I don't think those did well enough to warrant more coming out. But ultimately, it's just really weird to me, and honestly kind of sad that they don't care anymore. In Australia, at least, but honestly, who knows how long the rest of the world has left. I personally give it until they decide to sell the next Captain America movie on Blu-ray. It sells 2 copies, and then they give up altogether. It's especially a far cry from the fact that the entire Infinity Saga had beautiful physical media releases. Each phase had these really nice sets, or you had a complete box set of every movie. They don't care anymore. But that's now. 15 years ago, that's a completely different story. DVDs and Blu-rays were at an all-time high in the late 2000s, so of course Marvel invested in these. One of the ones that always stood out to me was this Target exclusive set of The Incredible Hulk. Not one of the better MCU movies, but come on, it opens up and the Hulk's in there. That's awesome. But you see, one of the more interesting things to me is that these didn't just come out on DVD and Blu-ray, at least not the first 3 movies in the MCU. These had releases on VHS, which is the most surreal thing ever to me. It doesn't look real. This does not feel right in any way. Even in the early 2000s, VHS was on its way out. You'd go from commercials saying buy it now on VHS and DVD to just buy it now on DVD, because these weren't worth producing. Most people had DVD players. If you were rich enough, you might have even had a Blu-ray player. These weren't in anymore. The final VHS to get a wide release was A History of Violence in 2006, and then the last one to get a release at all in general was Cars, also in 2006, which is now selling for, oh man. And that essentially marked the death of VHS. People have moved on to DVD and even some to Blu-ray. There was no point in these anymore. But you see, one market didn't give up. They cared too much. South Korea. Interestingly, one of the biggest markets for VHS was South Korea, and it was for a few reasons. With a much larger population and a lot of really niche movies, especially stuff like K-dramas, it just made sense, especially considering how cheap they were to manufacture compared to DVDs. And that's why even though VHS basically died in the mid-2000s, you can still get stuff like Avatar on VHS or the entire Harry Potter franchise, except for the last movie. I'm not even a Harry Potter fan, I don't really care about these movies, but this pisses me off. You are one movie away. Or one of the more interesting ones, the first 3 MCU movies, Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, and Iron Man 2. These are probably the most jarring ones for me because I feel like these marked a very big shift in sci-fi films. It was the start of an era in a way where a lot of these movies were focused on world building. Not that they don't tell good stories, but come on now. It was this really big benchmark in the genre in my opinion. So to see them running on VHS is really surreal. I don't know, these movies just feel weirdly synonymous with Blu-ray and DVD. It's just wrong. One of the more interesting things is just how few sources there were on these, meaning I don't think there were many copies produced. For Iron Man and Iron Man 2, all I could find was a few Reddit posts, one YouTube video, and a couple of places where they were for sale at some point. And then for The Incredible Hulk, it was just one place where they were charging $250, and for a second there I had a beautifully fleeting thought. And then I realized it was sold out. God damn it. And I mean, the releases themselves, they're not much to write home about, they're just the movies but on VHS. They're stylized pretty much identically to the DVDs, the only difference is they're in Korean. And also, they lack bonus features because these are dumb stupid VHS tapes and they don't do that. The actual contents of the tapes themselves are also pretty self-explanatory. The movies are on them. From the only video on YouTube posted about any of these, which is the opening to Iron Man, apparently there was a trailer for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at the start. That's cool, I guess. And I mean, with how well the CGI was done in these movies, it's not one of those situations where the low quality covers the blemishes, because there aren't really any blemishes to cover. I mean, the final fight in The Incredible Hulk looks like a PS3 game at some points, so I guess that would probably help its case, but again, that one is impossible with sources. There is nothing on this. If nothing else, it is just really surreal to see these movies that feel like a product of an era way after VHS be put on VHS. And it's not one of those situations where they're taped onto VHS either. No, these were official releases done by Marvel and Paramount. And I think that's what makes them so weird, because yeah, in the grand scheme of things, they made sense to release in South Korea as VHS tapes, as did stuff like Avatar or any of the Harry Potter movies, because this was a big market. But it just feels so weird. And that's pretty much it in the ways of MCU releases on VHS. After Iron Man 2, Disney acquired Marvel. Not to mention VHS had already pretty much died as a format in South Korea. It was over. And now that stuff like Deadpool and Wolverine or No Way Home exist, where you have a bunch of characters from other universes coming in from movies 20 odd years ago, I guess you can make the argument that like Spider-Man 2 counts as an MCU VHS release. But come on, that's the biggest cheat ever. That's not as fun. Now, to be fair, there might be some more MCU VHS releases of something like Thor, Captain America, The First Avenger somewhere out there, but I doubt it. The fact that there are so few sources on the ones that do exist means that these are probably manufactured in very limited quantities. I'm guessing less than 1,000 per movie, honestly. And with less and less interest in VHS as the years continue to go on, it would have been flat out redundant to release these. Now, a few years ago, I did sell off my entire MCU DVD collection that I spent the better part of my childhood building, and that's why these gave me a brilliant idea. There would be no funny way to rebuild this collection.